Greetings, people of Earth. My name is Jax. Welcome back. Join me at the side of the fire for a lovely little conversation about two things being true at the same time. Now, this is a piece of advice that I have consistently and recently found myself saying a lot in my head. Typically when I have like a preconceived notion or I have like a stereotype or I'm being a little prejudicial to somebody in my life or to a situation. Maybe I read a headline and go, that can't be right. And a little voice in my head tells me, you know what, Jax? Two things can be true at the same time. This is so important because I think humans naturally look at everything and we think we know everything. We think we see it all. We think we understand it. Our brains are hardwired to look at a situation and go, oh, I figured this out. That's dangerous. I'm going to avoid that. That looks safe. That looks like a good place for a drink. And we tend not to give it a second thought. And this is really frustrating given that there are like 8 billion of us little apes running around the planet, making these little prejudice judgments and, thought statements all the time. So this little voice in my head says, you know what, Jax? Two things can be true at the same time. And it's incredibly helpful. So what I mean by this is you might have a notion about the way someone behaves, the way that they're going to behave. Maybe you have an idea about, somebody back-talking you or gossiping behind your back, or there's a million situations where this can apply. And you might then say, oh, this person is talking behind my back. They must really hate me. They must really dislike who I am. They're not really my friend. But two things can be true at the same time. They might be your good friend and they might have some twisted logic or bad reason for coming to the conclusion that they do. They might be doing it out of some kind of weird compassion in their head. And so basically what I'm trying to say is just because you see one thing doesn't necessarily mean the other. This has to be taken with a giant grain of salt because obviously people's actions should speak louder than their words. The way someone treats you should not be just something that you put up with. You need to kind of be a little nuanced with this idea. I find this piece of advice is extremely useful, especially when someone is telling you some kind of information. Maybe you're getting, the tea or you're getting the gossip from your friend or your family member or whatever. Oh, did you hear Aunt Becky's been drinking a lot because of this? And you just really need to step back and say, okay, what am I hearing? Maybe both of these things are wrong. Maybe it's, one thing doesn't mean the other. We like to connect the dots a lot of the time, and life is not a connect the dots puzzle. We like to say, oh, well, he liked my Instagram, so maybe he likes who I am. Maybe both of those things could track, but they could also be two separate things, or they could be nothing at all. There could be no dots at all, and you're trying to, connect things that aren't there. And so I think that this little piece of advice of, two things can be true at the same time really applies in a lot of these situations. I think it's really helpful for someone who's an overthinker like me to just say to myself, actually, you know what? It might not be true. It might all be true. None of it might be true, or some of it might be true. And I know that this sounds very wishy-washy and a little bit obscure, but essentially this piece of advice is trying to convey that you really have to be careful with overthinking. You really have to be mindful about what conclusions you are drawing in what situations and what specific circumstances, because we all do this on a daily basis. And a lot of it can lead to just self-doubt. So next, the other part of this whole thing is sort of the innate pessimism or frustration that many of us can have with situations. And maybe this is preventing you from reaching specific opportunities. It's preventing you from achieving what you want to achieve. And what I mean by this is you might set out to go and achieve something. Maybe you're going to apply to college. Maybe you're going to message that cute person that you think is really attractive. And something in your brain or something you see is trying to discourage you from doing this? Is it trying to discourage you from taking this opportunity, going out on a limb, trying something new? And your brain will say, well, no, if you fail, you'll do this. And it might be completely wrong. Obviously, these thoughts are put in our head to try and keep us safe, keep us from getting embarrassed, keep us from doing dumb things. But at the same time, you have to weigh that with the potential benefit. What if your crush likes you back? What if, you get into that college that you never thought you would make it into? And just understand that two things can be true at the same time. They could really like you, and if you reach out to them, amazing. It works out, you're happy, you get to have some crazy adventure, relationship, whatever. And you should not let the inner voice in your head discourage you just based on one or two pieces of information, or again, that overthinking in your head saying, oh, how can you do this? How is this going to work? Why are you doing this? You're doing this stupid thing and it's really hurting you detrimentally and all of this. And you just really need to weigh things and just say, you know what? I understand that there's a risk. I understand that there is a innate issue. It might not work out. It might turn out poorly. It might. Sure, there's a place for that. There is obviously a reason that our brains do that innately. It goes back to evolution. However, the idea that, you can have your cake and you can eat it too, if you want to use a different metaphor, applies as well. I think we're told and we're raised to think in this very linear kind of way where, you work hard and that hard work eventually pays off and you slowly accumulate wealth and you meet somebody you like and you build a family. And, our parents and society really try to teach us this linear path of happiness and this is the way to go. You have to go this way. And that works for a lot of people. That is very true. I have friends and family who have followed that path and feel incredibly fulfilled and great. However, two things can be true at the same time. Your path to happiness will be different from someone else's. And if your path to happiness means having a cat and doing school and maybe moving across the country or moving across the planet and going to explore something completely different and maybe having a non-monogamous relationship, that might be your path to happiness. It doesn't have to be everyone's, but it might be yours. And essentially that's kind of the advice that I'm trying to convey here is that, I guess there's an old English saying where there's more ways to skin a cat. I don't like this saying because the idea of that is just not appealing to me. I don't know. And I'm a dog person, so that is kind of strange. But there are more ways to be happy than the traditional route, than the route you're supposed to do. And exactly like this, two things can be true at the same time. Things will work for one person that doesn't work for another. And you can't let that voice in your head tell you that you have to do something a specific way or that there is only one path to happiness. And if you miss the bus for it, you will never get back on that track. There are people who restart their lives at every age of life. In their 80s and 90s, people are deciding to do things for the first time, explore new ideas, reach out to that crush that they've had since first grade. And they've been amazed at the opportunity and the ability to do it. And what you learn from watching all of these stories is that it's just your own head holding you back. It's not the other people, it's not the universe, it's not how much money you have. It is your own perception and your own ability to reach out and make the first move, whatever that move is. So that's kind of the 2 cents for today. Don't necessarily just think that one way to happiness is the only way to happiness. There are more ways to skin a cat, and two things can be true at the same time. So I hope you're able to, reach out to that thing that you want, thoughtfully, understandingly, with a good intention at heart, and just go for it. Because you might be surprised at the level of happiness you find. You might come to a better place. You might enjoy the adventure and the journey. And it's not always about obtaining that goal, but it can be. So that's all I'm going to say for today. I hope that the video finds you in good health, happy, enjoying what you're doing. I hope you're having a good day, week, month, year, whatever you're having. I hope it's great. And leave me your thoughtful comments and everything down below. And as always, guys, I will talk to you tomorrow.